Today we are reviewing Insidious, The Red Door, the fifth movie in the Insidious franchise. Now, I can't say I'm the biggest fan of the Insidious franchise. I'd heard of it, I've seen bits of the first movie. Last week I was like, let me watch the first two movies in preparation for this. I didn't bother watching the other two, I couldn't be asked. My takeaway from the first two was that the Insidious franchise is a pretty decent horror franchise. I didn't mind the first two movies. They were pretty entertaining for horror movies. They are a bit slow paced, but for the most part, I quite liked it. So my expectations going into this new one was hopefully they round out the character arcs. Hopefully it's the end of the franchise and the trilogy, and it could be a pretty decent horror trilogy if they get it right. Now the big question is, did they get it right? The answer is no, they did not get it right. This movie has so much wrong with it. It is pretty bad. I would say this is one of the worst movies I've seen this year. I'm not even gonna lie. Is it worse than The Boogeyman? I don't know, but they're about on par. Maybe I'd probably watch The Boogeyman again over this because after the first two movies, which are pretty good, going to this, it's just kind of just a disgrace almost. I don't know what they did. I don't know why they brought back the main characters like 10 years later. Couldn't they have just rounded out the trilogy straight away? Maybe the actors didn't want to do it. I don't know what was going on with that. Let's talk about the good things because that will take me all of like 10 seconds, right? There's some decent jump scares and there's some decent scary ambience. Like there's actually a scary ambience and there's some scary scenes in there. Like some of the ghosts are pretty scary and they do create a few nice scary moments in the movie overall. But apart from those two things, the rest of it's dog shit, and we're gonna talk about that straight away. So let's talk about all the bad things and things wrong with this movie. First and foremost, it feels like just a rehash of number one. Like the whole first movie is them learning about astral projection and learning that Josh had his memory suppressed and that he could do it, and he goes and saves his son. This movie is almost the exact same thing, except both Dalton and Josh, they can't remember, of course, that they could astral project because of the second movie ending where they forget it all. They kind of show you the reminder at the start of the movie. And I was wondering, were they handicapped by the ending? Because obviously it's been over 10 years. Maybe they had to just roll with it and had to write around it or some shit. But they show it right at the beginning and it kind of plays a main part. And I just don't like it. Like the entire movie is Josh and Dalton experiencing weird shit and wondering why they're experiencing it. And they both know that they can't remember anything. Josh is saying he's got memory fog. He thinks there's something wrong with him. And Dalton just can't remember his 10th year of his life, right? They both know something's off, but they don't know what it is. And they should both go ask the mum, but both of them don't want to do it. It's just kind of like, okay, what are we doing? And that whole concept leads to a lot of the problems in this movie, right? I also feel like the first two Insidious franchises, they don't push the boat out too far for horror movies, but they're a decently original idea from what I've seen. Like, they're not super tropey for horror movies, but this one is like the most cookie cutter tropey shit. Like, they just bring back a bunch of tropes. Like, first and foremost, straight away, death in the family. Grandma's dead. I don't know if she didn't want to come back for this movie or whatnot, but she's dead. There's the whole divorce and there's the whole trauma thing. And maybe they were alluding to that the trauma that they're going through is bringing this shit back. You know what I mean? We see so many movies like that. Like, could we not just do something a little bit more original, you know? Also, all of that leads to kind of a regression in the character arcs. I feel like the characters from the first movie, they progress to the second movie and there's development in the characters. This movie should be the end of their arcs and it should be a lot more development. But because of the whole forgetting thing, we kind of just go all the way back to square one and their character arcs just restart. Josh is back to being a dick. He's back to being an asshole who couldn't really care about his kids. He's a deadbeat dad. The mom, for some reason, has had this weird character change where she decides that she's, instead of lying to Josh and Dalton, she's just going to divorce Josh and leave him out to dry and make the kids hate him in a way, which was also weird how they explained that. Dalton is just kind of Dalton, you know what I mean? He was kind of a really strong kid, and now he's just kind of an arsehole teenager. And also the pacing in this movie, let's not talk about the pacing of this movie. Just like the first one, the first at least half, like it's just so slow. These movies move so slow. Maybe you should watch it on like 2 times speed to like so it could speed up because they're just taking it so long. Like they're dragging things out that don't need to be dragged out. It's like, can we get to the meat and potatoes of the movie, please? Because you're taking way too long. The biggest problem for me with this movie, though, is that the villain is literally not talked about until the end. But yeah, the whole big villain of this movie is the same from number one, and they don't delve into him whatsoever. There's no lore on this guy. Like, why can't they explain to us why he's going after these two, or why he's so scary, or why he's so dangerous, or anything? All we get to see is him reappearing. I guess he possesses Dalton's body for like 5 minutes. Then he goes back and they kind of just run away. And yeah, that's about it, really. Like, Dalton scribbles over a painting of a door and he just disappears. Like, I just don't understand what the point of this guy bringing. Like, they could have just brought back any demon and it would have been better. At least in Insidious 2, the demon gets some explanation on why and what's going on, right? It's this mum and her son, and the mum abused the son, and now he's repossess Josh's body and murdering people. That makes sense. But we're back on villain number one, and we don't know anything about this guy. He just is a villain with a black and red face, kind of looks like Kane's mask from WWE. That's about all I know. Also, they kind of bring Josh's dad into the mix, even though he's been dead for 40 years, and they found out that he was an astral projector, and I don't understand why they needed to bring him into this. It makes no sense to now bring this random character into the mix. I don't know if he was mentioned in 3 or 4, but it made no sense. He didn't really play any part in the movie, really. So that was weird. There's also a lot of unnecessary kind of filler shit in this movie. Like, Dalton finds this new friend at college, and they kind of go around doing weird hijinks for a while. They go to this frat party, and yeah, the ghost that's throwing up is pretty disturbing. But apart from that, there's this whole weird shit going on there. And it's a lot of filler that doesn't need to be in the movie. Like, you could cut all of that shit out and just get to the meat and potatoes. And that kind of ruins the pacing of the movie, like I said. And that gets me on to the last thing I want to talk about why this movie is shit. And that is the ending. Because the ending is basically, and this is going to be a spoiler if you haven't seen it already, but the ending is basically throughout the entire movie, Dalton's been drawing this door, the red door that we see in number one, right? And as the painting or the drawing, as he keeps drawing it, there's this weird ghost that starts to appear in the front of it with a hammer in his hand. And it turns out that that is Josh when he was possessed. And because he doesn't remember, he's confused and he's now astral projecting again. And what happens is he goes back into the astral plane, or what's it called, the further. And then the original demon from number one possesses him. Oh my God. And then Josh goes back in and saves him again, just exactly like number one. And then Josh sacrifices himself so Dalton can go away. And then Dalton is just like, let me paint over the door. So he goes to his picture and he scribbles over the door, and the door starts to disappear. And that is the ending of the movie, pretty much. That's how they defeat the demon. What? What on earth is that, bro? It makes no sense. What is going on? That makes no sense. So does that mean in number one, the reason why the demon existed in the first place was because Dalton drew the painting or the picture and drew a red door, and that made him exist, or that allowed him a way to escape from whatever he was stuck in? Like, explain it. How does it work? Can someone explain the ending to me, please? Because I am so confused. I am so confused, man. It makes no sense. It really does, but it really doesn't. But anyway, overall, out of 10, I'm going to give this movie a 4. I give the other two like a 6 to 6.5 out of 10. This one is a 4 at best. This one is shocking, man. I did not like this movie. I would say that this movie is definitely not very good. Definitely the worst with this cast of characters. Hopefully they don't try and rehash it all over again. I think this franchise is kind of burnt, at least with the main cast of characters. And yeah, they kind of ruined the trilogy, I guess. But it is what it is. I wasn't really connected to this. I think the movie has been a big success with the box office, which I guess is good for them. They'll probably make more Insidious movies. It will probably be more of like the third and fourth one where it's not the main cast of characters. But yeah. Oh, but that's my take, ladies and gentlemen. And I'll see you all in the next